History, remote participation via Zoom was introduced in 2020, March of 2020, at the height of the pandemic. It did allow for accessibility when in-person meeting was not feasible. The city did continue that through the pandemic and stopped that remote participation in October of 2023, when cities across the state and the Bay Area specifically were being hit with hate speech. The three options for consideration this evening for the city.
As Christina mentioned, cities were beginning to be hit by what people refer to as Zoom bombers. We were watching cities in the area like Walnut Creek, Emeryville, Sunnyvale, Brentwood, Danville, Livermore, Milpitas, El Cerrito, to name a few, start to get hit by the Zoom bombers. Specifically, they were making anti-Semitic statements at council meetings, and the administrative decision was made, and we did notify via the agenda that we were discontinuing remote participations in October. That same evening, or not the same evening, but after the decision was made, the following council meeting, we did have 6 or 7 people who used names for the remote participation that were associated with anti-Semitism. They logged into the Zoom, but due to canceling the remote participation, they weren't able to make those comments. So I know there have been questions about why and at what point, and as Christina stated, I believe most jurisdictions have canceled remote participation. It was initiated by COVID. It was a method of dealing with participation during COVID. And then unfortunately, when those actions occurred, it just across the board, we were watching cities systematically be hit with those kind of comments. So that was the origin of the removal of the remote participation.
I propose this specifically only for budget workshop, just to make sure I'm clear on that one. One of the reasons why I wanted to have is this year, especially because of Measure N Pass, as we worked with our community members for support on that, and we made it very clear to them that we will provide all transparency. They can participate through being in person, but many of them, because of their work schedules, it is not possible for them to join. So I want to provide them a transparency and as well as the ways they can communicate with us, especially if they have any questions on Measure N money, how we are going to spend it, so it will be convenient for them. So that's the reason I proposed it, just to let you guys know.
Okay, all right, thank you for that clarification.
I am concerned about what Stephen said, the city manager said about the Zoom bombing. I think it would be extremely disruptive, and the value of the meeting would be out. I think the disruption would outweigh the value in that case. So I'm just very concerned about that, and I don't know how I'm going to vote on it, but I'm just concerned about that aspect.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to jump on what Councilman Adler mentioned, because I do have empathy for people who are affected by racial epithets and slurs that come online, but I want to be clear here. Is there a way to moderate that where you could kick someone off the Zoom?
The standard for kicking someone out of a meeting or out of a Zoom is rather high.
Okay.
Specifically, they talk about disruption, and disruption speech does not equal disruption.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that the chair can do, which is to redirect or try to redirect the speech to something that's relevant to council business, because that's one ground for not allowing them to speak. But most often they will take some element of council business and then insert the epithets and that hate speech into that, so you don't even have that option, and the speech has to be allowed to continue for the 3 minutes.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Rubio.
I think the key questions were asked, that we were trying to assess the cost-benefit analysis and, in absolute terms, if there was no concern of possible disruption of that nature, I think it's an easy decision to try to make it accessible to the majority of the public. This is a difficult decision because as we were talking, for example, about predicting, what the population growth, for example, is going to be in San Ramon, and I don't have that crystal ball either to predict who will or will not call. I have no way of knowing that. I do know that for something as significant as a budget workshop, it is worthwhile considering perhaps for that one time, but I do also realize the inherent risk and am a little bit myself in a conundrum on that, trying to decide which one outweighs the other. I do believe that if people have questions, however, it's not, our meetings are recorded. People are able to see it and read it. If they do have questions and want to ask follow-up questions, if they can reach out to us by email, it is most effective, and our staff can respond to those questions and moving forward. In terms of the budget workshop, will any final decisions be made that day such that someone who watches the meeting, will they have an opportunity and ask a question via email as a follow-up and get an answer from us prior to us taking a vote?
Yes, that's the design of the workshops, where it will be, we will have at least.
Now here on how we want to proceed. I'll just go back to my experience now during COVID when we were still doing these remote meetings, and then we made a decision that we thought transitioning out of COVID, hybrid meetings and things like that would be good to continue that methodology of allowing the two-way speaking. But we did have some fairly consistent hate speech that occurred during our meetings. We had anti-Semitic, we had anti-Chinese, anti-Indian type comments that were coming almost every single meeting. In some cases, every item of every meeting, we were getting that type of comment. So that concerns me that even if it's not a Zoom bomb, this creates kind of an environment to where they're directing those comments in many cases to our own staff, our city staff, or we have guests come and do presentations and it's directed towards them, and they're just coming to participate in the meeting. And it was quite disruptive, so or troublesome, I should add. We can take it up here. We get the free speech idea. We understand that. People can say what they want. They can say hateful things, and I get that whole business. But I do worry that this has an impact on more than just us. And then my other concern, I guess, would be if we go this route, then and just for the budget workshops, we're essentially setting a precedent that, well, if we can do it for a budget workshop, we can do it for any kind of meeting. Why is the budget workshop so important? I get it, and I kind of asked for this to be on the agenda, but based on the whole idea of transparency for the budget workshops, measure in money, oversight, those kinds of things. However, it would, to me, in my mind, it's kind of hard if you do it for this one thing, how do you not do it for the rest of our meetings? And then if we're doing it for all of our meetings, then we're back to doing it really for all the commission meetings as well. So it's either, to me, it's either you do it or you don't do it, and I think that, to me, that's what the question is. So I'll just kind of start off with that. I don't believe there's any state prohibition on us doing this. There are some jurisdictions maybe that do it. There are not many jurisdictions that have gone back to remote participation. I know that we as council members can have either an emergency or just cause type situation that allow us to participate remotely, and there's certain rules for that. But that same thing doesn't currently apply to the rest of the public. So
Sorry, can I say something?
yeah. Well, I'll just finish
finishing.
my last thought on this is just that I do believe that. Well, I'll just kind of reiterate. I think there's risk in doing this. Again, I'm all for the transparency, but I think it just opens up a whole kind of Pandora's box of potential problems that we're going to have to deal with that we never had to deal with prior to the pandemic. This is just a post-pandemic or a pandemic and a post-pandemic phenomena. And so anyway, that's my initial thought on this, but go ahead.
My comment may close this much faster. So during our conversation, typically as Steve mentioned, city manager mentioned that we do this typically at 4 o'clock, right? But now we are planning to do 7 o'clock. So that means pretty much residents are back from work and then they should be able to join. So in that case, I definitely see that there is no reason why we cannot just let them come to council meeting rather than having a Zoom. So I just wanted to make that comment because initially the whole conversation this came up because typically we do it at 4 o'clock. So that's when a lot of working folks they couldn't join and they were complaining about it. So now if we are doing 7 o'clock, I agree with all the comments, and I don't see any reason why we need to have Zoom in that case.
Okay. Other comments from council? And because at some point we got to give direction to the staff on which way to proceed.
I just want to say, Mayor, that the Zoom dial-in, I think, is a luxury. I don't think it's a mandatory thing that we have to offer. I mean, the doors of the chambers are open. The doors to City Hall are open. We televise this on YouTube. Folks can email us, and they've submitted public comment. Email us. So I'm not. I don't have a I don't have a strong opinion about mandating Zoom for these sessions. So.
And they will have an opportunity to respond after each meeting before we take a vote on it.
Yeah, correct.
I mean, after each
Yeah.
meeting before we take a vote on it. So, yeah.
And typically after the workshops, the council adoption evening is very routine in nature. Except for last year with our financial situation, in prior years, it goes over without much fanfare because a lot of the work is done at the workshops.
Okay. I did have one other thought, but let me go to Councilmember Adler first.
I'm listening to what everybody said, but my original comment, I do have concerns, and I don't feel that we should do it, but anyway, I'm ready to vote when you guys are.
Okay. Well, the final comment I was going to have is that there is some potential legislation floating around Sacramento right now to require this in the future. As I think it's either SB or AB 707, and that would require two-way remote participation of some kind, whether it's visual or telephonic. So that's something we need to monitor, regardless of our decision tonight. That's something that may be coming down the road anyway, is a requirement by the state, in which case we then have to comply and make sure we got the infrastructure. There's some challenges with that because it also currently, the way it's written, requires that if for some reason you lose connectivity then you must stop the meeting. You can't proceed with the meeting. And so that could be potentially disruptive, but, and there's some resource potential issues there too. But just want to make everybody aware of that this may become a requirement at some point if that legislation does go through. Okay, so what's the pleasure of the council? Do we want to leave things as is, and with the scheduling the workshop in the evening, we just keep things as is, or do we want to pursue remote participation any further? I'm hearing no strong desire to go back to remote participation.
Keep things as is, status quo.
And I'm getting a head nod from Councilmember Adler, Vice Mayor Verose, Councilmember Rubio. Do we need a formal vote on this issue?
I don't see that you need one. We've asked for one, but I don't see that you have to do a formal vote necessarily, as long as we have our three, it looks like 5 nodding heads.
Yeah. I see all 5 in agreement on this. Okay. All right. With that, then we will move on to the. You have everything you need on that?
Yes, except for our vote to continue this for another half.